We will get started in just a second, but I like to start right when we say we're going to start, so. I'm watching the second hand. Everybody enjoy the Royals win today. Kneeling. Anybody enjoy the Royals win today? Well, I sure did. Okay, we're going to call Gardner City Council to order. I would invite everybody to stand and join us with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, we're going to start off this evening with a couple of presentations and proclamations. Hopefully there's no tongue twisters in here. And, hey, Jennifer, you want to come up?
Sure.
The first order of business is going to be a proclamation for Autism Awareness Month. Anyone else can feel free. Okay. You got the Undertaker? Right on. Okay. Well, I'm going to read the proclamation, and then I'm going to give Jennifer Smith, who's with the Autism Society of the Heartland, an opportunity to maybe say a couple of words about Autism Awareness Month. So, whereas autism and autism spectrum disorder are general terms for a group of complex disorders of brain development characterized in varying degrees by repetitive behaviors and difficulties with social interaction, verbal and nonverbal communication, and whereas ASD affects all persons regardless of race, religion, socioeconomic status, or geography, and whereas ASDs are the fastest growing serious developmental disability in the United States and can cost a family $60,000 a year on average. And whereas the CDC reports the incidence of autism in the United States is now 1 in 68 children being diagnosed with ASD by age 8, a rate that has risen far above the 2006 estimate of 1 in 110. Boys are nearly 5 times more likely than girls to have autism, with 1 in 42 boys being diagnosed. And whereas World Autism Awareness Day is celebrated on Thursday, April 2nd, 2015, and whereas the City of Gardner recognizes the entire month of April 2015 as Autism Awareness Month to call attention to ASDs stress the importance of early diagnosis and early intervention, and to celebrate the unique talents and qualities of individuals with autism and their parents, relatives, and professionals that provide valued service. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Chris Morrow, Mayor of the City of Gardner, Kansas, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2015 as Autism Awareness Month. Can you tell us a couple of things about autism awareness?
Yes. Well, we are so excited to be here today, so you can see some of our bright and shining stars here that have grown up in this community and the opportunities that our loved ones are getting in this community. Many of you have seen my daughter grow. She's 21 now, and my son Cameron is 20, but unfortunately this is Wheel of Fortune time, so he's not not able to join us. But we have some great opportunities here in Gardner. We have a fantastic Special Olympics program that is growing by leaps and bounds. And we also have a great school system that supports our loved ones and gives them the opportunities to grow. And another thing I want to inform you all is we've got some great companies within this community that are hiring individuals, not just with autism, but all disabilities. So it's important that it's not just the school, but it's the community, and it takes all of us in the community to, this takes all of us in the community to live and grow and get a job. But I do want to make a special announcement. Eric Wright, he's with the Johnson County Sheriff's Department. The Johnson County Sheriff's Department has a program called Take Me Home program. It's one of the only ones in Johnson County that if we have an individual with cognitive or developmental disabilities, they get registered in a database system. And if something were to happen to one of our loved ones that went missing, they would be able to immediately respond and know exactly what to do, where to go, how to respond to this situation. And I know many of our Gardner police officers as well have been trained and know our families and know our loved ones and how to respond. But what we're excited about is that Sheriff has reserved a special car just for autism awareness with Alzheimer's and autism for the Take Me Home program. And that's why Eric's here and showing off the car as well. And we're very proud of our city and county working with our loved ones with autism.
No, you covered it. That was great. We're just here show our support and promote our Take Me Home program. And any information you want about that, just see me or call the number on the side of the car we've got there, and we'll tell you all about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
The next proclamation is for National Crime Victims' Rights Week. We've got a guest.
I don't have any cute children to bring up.
That's
With me.
This is Janae Hanslick, who's here with Safe Home, which provides valuable services for Johnson County, and I would imagine beyond.
Yes, we provide services primarily to Johnson County, but throughout the metro area to victims of domestic violence.
So, whereas Americans are victims of more than 26 million crimes each year, and crime can touch the lives of anyone regardless of age, national origin, race, creed, religion, gender, sexual orientation, immigration, or economic status. And whereas involving survivors helps victim service providers and criminal justice professionals understand the culture, values, and expectations of under and unserved victims who seek assistance and justice. And whereas engaging victims, communities, and learning from leaders about their unique needs helps service providers foster a supportive and culturally relevant atmosphere in which victims seek help and healing. And whereas victims know best how to direct and manage their own lives, and true recovery from crime will incorporate a victim's cultural, religious, economic, social, and personal interests. And whereas with the full weight of their community and victim service providers behind them, survivors will feel empowered to face their grief, loss, fear, anger, and shame without fear and judgment, and will be understood and worthy of support. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Chris Morrow, Mayor of the City of Gardner, Kansas, do hereby proclaim the week of April 19th through the 25th as National Crime Victims' Rights Week.
Yes, thank you. Crime Victims' Rights Week is especially important to us at Safe Home because crime itself is bad enough, but to be a victim of crime in your own home at the hands of someone who's supposed to love you, that is a very different kind of crime. And we are so very, very fortunate here in Johnson County. I can't emphasize that enough, that we have such an incredible collaboration of officials, of county officials, of law enforcement, of the district attorney's office, and Safe Home, that we are able to provide services from the full spectrum of, to meet the full spectrum of needs of victims of domestic violence in our community. 2 years ago, well, it's actually 4 years ago now, in July of 2011, the district attorney's office instituted what's called a lethality assessment program. And what that means is that when law enforcement is called out to a domestic violence call, they will take that victim aside and, using a research-based survey tool, will ask that victim a series of questions. And based on those answers, it helps them determine the level of danger that person is in, if they're in danger of being murdered. And what they do is, right at the scene of that call, they pull out a cell phone and call Safe Home's 24-hour hotline, hand it to that victim of crime, that domestic violence victim, and that person is immediately able to talk to our staff, come into our shelter, schedule a counseling appointment, schedule a meeting with an advocate. And at the same time, that information also goes to the district attorney's office, so that when that person is prosecuted, that information is also available. So, again, I can't emphasize how fortunate we are to live in a community that has this kind of collaboration. It doesn't happen everywhere, and I am especially grateful to Mayor Morrow for his support of Safe Home. So thank you for this proclamation, and thank you for inviting me to be here today.
Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Just for anybody that might be wondering, the mayor suffers from diabetes. We'll talk about that in November. But I was supposed to have a snack before I came, but as it turns out, I got a little something on the blue suit that I was going to wear. So instead I ended up in blue jeans and a blue shirt and a blue sports coat, but I never did eat. So normally I would drink Diet Coke, but tonight I'm going to have some Coke to get my blood sugar level back up. But if you see me sweating, I'm not about to pitch over, at least now that I've got the drink in my hand, so. Somebody would need it too. Next up on the agenda is public comments, but before we begin public comments, I just want to ask the members of the governing body, if you'll notice on the agenda, there's nothing about a executive session. Is there anybody that's on the dais that's intending to make a motion to adjourn into executive session? Todd?
No.
Tori?
No.
No? Just wanted to make that clear before we moved on to public comments. So, public comments. At this time, members of the public are welcome to use this time to make comments about city matters or items on the agenda that are not part of a public hearing. If you're interested in making public comments, please approach the podium, state your name and address for the record, and be heard. With no one coming forward, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there a council member that would like to remove an item from the consent agenda?
I would like to remove items 3 and 4 from the consent agenda.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve consent agenda items 1 and 2?
So moved.
Second. Motion Shute, second Freeman, that we approve consent agenda items 1 and 2. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Consent agenda items 1 and 2 pass. Consent agenda item number 3, consider approving a lease purchase agreement between the City of Gardner and Key Government Financing Incorporated to finance the IT infrastructure project. And, Steve, do you have questions?
Yeah.
Greg, our network administrator is here.
Yeah, I was gonna ask Greg to come up real quick and just, I know that we're doing this as a lease purchase.
Yes.
The question I had was, really more pertaining towards the capitalization analysis that was done on this. I'm assuming our finance team did that capitalization analysis?
It went through the finance team.
And I know you probably don't know this, but do we happen to know what our residual value for the equipment's going to be after the 3-year term?
No, I haven't heard anything about that.
Okay, because I know we're doing this as a lease purchase, which means we're gonna be purchasing the equipment at the end of the lease period.
Right.
My question is, would it be even worth what we're gonna pay at the end of the lease period to purchase that equipment?
I don't believe that there's any balloon payment at the end of the purchase. It's just 3 straight payments for the total amount, and then there's no, I don't even think there was a $1 at the end of it for the buyout. I didn't see one in there. Something like that. Yeah.
Okay, so we absorb the depreciation within the contract itself?
Within the contract.
And then after that, I'm assuming we're gonna have a maintenance schedule for the components, a rolling maintenance schedule?
Yes, all of the equipment includes it's not included in the price of this lease, but there are year 4 and year 5 pricing that's on my desk already for the equipment and for the software and for all of the things that were included in the purchase.
Okay, I just know the obsolescence curve for this equipment is the thing I'm
Yes.
concerned about. It's very short.
Right.
Especially the network equipment, and I just wanted to make sure that we were ahead of that, so.
Oh, yeah. We're on.
Okay, thank you.
Any others?
Any other questions? If not, I'd consider a motion for consent agenda item number 3.
So moved.
Second again. Motion, Shute, second Freeman, that we approve the master tax exempt lease purchase agreement between the City of Gardner and Key Government Financing Incorporated, dated April 15th, 2015, and the associated addendum and property schedule, and authorize the city administrator to execute the lease purchase agreement. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Consent agenda item number 3 passes. Consent agenda item number 4. Consider approval of the purchase and delivery of 8,790 feet of 600 amp primary underground copper cable from HD Supply Power Solutions in the amount of $128,773.50 for the primary Pioneer feeder project, project number EL 1501. Questions?
I had a question on this. I noticed that we're putting in a small, and I'm not sure who to ask. Right here. Oh, great, there we go. We're putting in a small transformer by the soccer fields. Is that included in this? Keeping in mind any future activities out there, 5, 10 years even down the line, is that, are we putting something in there we could use? Like, I'm just thinking of when we did the festival on the trails, when we do that.
Yep.
We ended up installing a transformer downtown there. Is there anything else we might need to add or upgrade or?
We'll be placing cabinets along that side so we can add on wherever they want.
Okay. Oh, Jeff?
I may add that we were aware they're doing this project too, and we've had some preliminary discussion that we have some interest in reviewing the plans once they're completed for that purpose alone, to bring some additional power, potentially if not sooner than later, for special events and even some of our current programming where we currently have some needs.
Yeah, I figured it'd be easier now than.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Steve, did you have anything?
No, I did it for Mr. Winter.
Okay. Well, I'd entertain a motion for consent agenda item number 4.
So moved.
Second. Motion, Winters, second Freeman, that we approve the purchase and delivery of 8,790 feet of 600 amp primary underground copper cable from HD Supply Power Solutions in the amount of $128,773.50 for the Pioneer feeder project, project number EL 1501. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Consent agenda item number 4 passes. Thank you for joining us at the podium this evening. New business item number 1, consider holding a public hearing for the purpose of receiving comments to a request for a waiver of distance limitation to allow for the sale of cereal malt beverages within 200 feet of a school, church, or library during the Festival on the Trails event to be held on June 12th and 13th, 2015. Jeannie, welcome to the podium.
Good evening. The Festival on the Trails Association will be holding their event on June 12th and 13th, 2015. And again this year, they would like to have a beer garden and sell cereal malt beverages, and they need a special event permit to do this. As part of this, because the location is within 200 feet of a church and a school and a library, then a waiver of distance limitation is needed. So the first item is to hold a public hearing for that waiver of distance limitation. They have been in discussions with the police department, and the police department has arranged for adequate security, and the map, as I'm aware, is the same, the location is the same. The beer garden will be open from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. So a public hearing is required, and then consideration of the waiver of distance limitation, and then consideration of the special event permit for the C&D license.
Okay. And unless anybody's got questions of Jeannie, I would need a motion and a second to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion, Shute, second, Freeman, that we open the public hearing to consider to receive comments regarding new business item number 1. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the public hearing is open. With no one coming forward, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close.
Second.
Motion, Shute, second, Freeman, that we close the public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, public hearing is closed. New business item number 2. Consider a request for a waiver of distance limitation to allow for the sale of cereal malt beverages within 200 feet of a school, church, or library during the Festival on the Trails event to be held June 12th and 13th, 2015. Does anyone have questions for Jeannie? And I believe we've got a representative here from the Festival on the Trails Committee. I will say that I believe this is the same spot that they've used for the past 3 or 4 years.
I did have a question for the chief. Understanding that this is a 2-day event now, and we know that we're somewhat short-staffed right now on the force. Do you have provisions in place with outside agencies like the county sheriff and other entities to pick up the slack?
Yes.
We don't know how long some of those individuals will be out, so.
Yes, I talked to the Ottawa police chief, and I talked to Daryl Reese from the county office, and yes, I will have the resources there.
Okay. I know you guys are always prepared, and we always bring in folks from the outside to help with crowd control, but given the current circumstance, it's probably be even more important that we have that.
Other questions? Comments? I'd entertain a motion on new business item number 2.
So moved.
Second.
Motion, Shute, second, Winters, that we approve a request for a waiver of distance limitation to allow for the sale of retail cereal malt beverages within 200 feet of a school, church, or library during the Festival on the Trails event to be held on June 12th and 13th, 2015. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. New business item number 3. Consider approving a general retailer special event permit allowing Festival on the Trails Association to retail cereal malt beverages for consumption on the premises for their event to be held June 12th and 13th, 2015. I don't think that we require any further, this is, as Laura Gorley would say, this is just housekeeping. So unless someone has a comment or a question, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion, Winters, second, Freeman, that we approve a general retailer special event permit allowing the Festival on the Trails Association to retail cereal malt beverages for consumption on the premises for the Festival on the Trails event to be held on June 12th and 13th, 2015. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. That's cereal malt beverages for the Festival on the Trails yet again. New business item number 4, consider adopting an ordinance to codify electric rates into Title 13 of the Gardner Municipal Code. Amy Foster, welcome back.
Thank you for having me. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Back to that Laura Gorley word, housekeeping. I'm actually here with a housekeeping item to look at codifying the electric rates back into Chapter 13 of the Municipal Code. We actually presented this to the Utility Advisory Commission and got the approval to bring that back to you from the March 5th meeting. This was actually approved by the City Council February 17th, 2014, and ended up actually being wrote over by ordinance number 2438 that actually created the Electric Utility Advisory Board. So we're kind of here for the housekeeping to put that back into the municipal code. The Utility Advisory Commission did make some changes regarding electric rates to electric charges in the power cost adjustment segment, as well as we had the city attorney made some changes to the renewable energy resource rate, so that the language actually conformed to the mandatory Kansas statute. And so the electric rates have remained effective by ordinance number 2445's ratification of the EUB resolution. And so we just feel it is good policy to codify electric rates within the municipal code. So that's what we're asking for tonight.
Well, you might want to hang tight for just a second. We're going to open the floor for public comments regarding new business item number 4. If there's a member of the public that would like to speak about new business item number 4, approach the podium, state your name and address for the record, and be heard.
Hello, I'm Michael Thomas, 246 West Park. Mayor, council members. On the part of the electric rate document that was sent out, I've got a question on page 3, section I. Under the service charge and demand charge for the city, it is at 0. I would like some clarification on that.
With the determination of demand, that is actually based on a high peak, and so the city of Gardner interdepartmental rate does not include demand because we pay a wholesale cost. We pay the cost of a kilowatt hour, and so with the demand, that is actually creating that peak so that we make sure we have enough electricity in our contract to supply our big users. With that, the determination and the demand, those demand charges, they actually get a kilowatt hour discount, and so we don't charge that to the city, just a wholesale cost. Can I answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mike. Any questions or comments for Amy regarding new business item number 4?
Amy, one just very quick question. At the meeting for the utility board, was it a unanimous
show support to have this brought to the city council?
It was a 4, one of the commissioners was missing.
Okay, but
yes,
of those
they're
in
unanimous,
attendance,
yes.
it was unanimous?
Mhm,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
I had 2 questions.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your presentation. The first thing is, I want to make it clear, and maybe you can verify this with me, there are no rate changes in this document. The rates are flat,
Absolutely
they are
not.
just verifying to the letter the exact rates and surcharges and demand charges that were on the original resolution. So our rates are not changing with this document.
That is correct.
Correct, okay. Secondly, I know we're pulling them back into chapter 13 of the municipal code. If, and this is really more of it's policy determination on the dais here, but if we were to move towards a BPU, a Board of Public Utilities, and this is really more of a question to the city attorney, we would not have to remove these from chapter 13 if we were to go to a BPU in the future?
Well, I know from talking to Cheryl tonight that there is some BPU legislation in the legislature, depending on what that looks like. Then, if you are granted statutory authority to actually have an independent body, then they have authority to enact rates, and it wouldn't appear in the municipal code.
Okay.
They would adopt it by their own action by resolution. But right now, that vehicle isn't available. As Amy noted, it's not required that our rates appear in the code. It's just, I think staff thought, well, if we put it in the code, that way, when you go on the website, you click on the code, it's right there in the code, and so it's just that much clearer. And so that's really the purpose of it.
And I totally understand the justification. I just needed to know if we were to have that discussion about a BPU and have a BPU in the future, would we have to remove those items from chapter 13? And it sounds like we would have to do that.
I think that's right, because the statutory authority to set those rates, the code is solely a legislative enactment of this body.
Mhm.
And if there's a separate, if there's statutory authority creating separate legal authority for this new BPU to enact rates, then it's now outside of your purview, and so it would be pulled out.
Okay, great, thanks, appreciate it, Brian.
Anyone else, questions or comments? If not, I would entertain a motion on ordinance number 2483.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Freeman, second Winters, that we adopt ordinance number 2483, revising Title 13 Utilities, Chapter 13.25, electric rates of the Gardner Municipal Code. Freeman?
Yes.
Roberts?
Yes.
Shute?
Yes.
Winters?
Yes.
Ordinance number 2483 passes. New business item number 5 is consider adopting an ordinance 2484, revising the position and classification system and pay plan for 2015, and adopting a resolution revising the personnel policy manual 2010 edition.
Thank you.
Alan Abramovitz, welcome to the podium, and
Thank you.
and welcome to the city of Gardner.
Thank you.
You've
Very
joined us
happy to be
recently.
here.
We're very glad to have you on board.
Thank you. Well, if you recall, back in March, Gail Merriweather from Arthur J. Gallagher and Company presented the compensation study. And just as a reminder, I wanted to recirculate this. These are the or current, I should say, pay ranges on the right, and then on the left are the proposed pay ranges. And of course, as she stated, the objective was internal equity, external competitiveness, ease of administration, and the assessment she did included job descriptions, organization charts, and management interviews, as well as market analysis, and then the base salary structure, which is before you now. So what the staff is recommending is to adopt the ordinance revising the position and classification system and pay plan for 2015. And the reason we are recommending this is necessary for ranges to be consistent throughout our pay plan. Currently, there is no consistency in the midpoint progression of our current ranges. As you can see on the right side, the differences in the midpoint could be 8%, 34%. It's really kind of a mishmash of progression from grade 1 up to grade 9. And so the ranges, the new ranges would be very consistent and would be equal midpoint progression as well as range spread from the first level to the 10th level. And then this would also be a best practice for the city. So we are recommending to adopt a resolution revising the personnel policy manual, which I believe the policy is in your packet. And we're recommending the changes to Section 5-107, Economic Adjustments, and Section 5-108 of the Personnel Policy Manual regarding merit increases. And this will allow the staff flexibility in implementing the merit increase plan. So rather than determining an annual number above which the employees have to attain to reach a merit increase, this will give us the flexibility to determine what how to actually give the merit increases in a uniform manner throughout the city, throughout the employees. This will also provide the leveling of positions and compensation and greater consistency across departments. So, what this will also do is provide merit increases using a comp ratio. Comp ratio, of course, is the relationship of an individual's salary to the midpoint of the particular range, and provides raises based on merit and market. The midpoint of the range is, of course, the market target, and by using the comp ratio, it actually drives employee salaries towards the market and creates a more equitable salary structure than what we currently have. And this method will also allow more employees to receive a merit increase, not just the exceptional performers. Of course, if someone needs improvement or unsatisfactory under this plan, they would not get a merit increase. These actions will allow staff to award merit increases and make the merit increases retroactive to January 1st. So the recommended revisions to Section 5-107 regarding economic adjustments and Section 5-108 are in your handouts. Any questions?
Yeah. Well, as is our usual policy, we're going to just stay right there, and we'll see. We'll open the floor for public comments regarding new business item number 5. If there's anyone in attendance that would like to speak regarding new business item number 5, please approach the podium and be heard. With no one coming forward, questions for Ellen regarding ordinance 2484 and actually also resolution 1921.
I had a question.
Sure.
I know when we had the electric utility study, we talked about the ranges of different classifications for jobs.
Right.
And I don't think we've done that yet for water and wastewater. Have we? Like, when are we will we have that all lined out?
All of those jobs are, I believe, contained within this, within the plan.
But did we need to reevaluate, make sure that if, I don't know what the levels are in the water, but let's say the water, for example, let's say we only had operator 2s, do we need to make sure there's operators 2s, 3s, and 4s, or whatever the lingo is? Do we have all that?
Well, this is, in the compensation study.
I just wanna make sure
She did make recommendations on that, but this is actually the first part of the comp study. Then we're going to move into looking at whether or not or how to create career ladders when necessary.
I've got a question. As we look at the proposed table, the new schedule for 2015, the thing that stuck out the most was the largest adjustments we made were to the top level on the top, to the top level of pay and the top level of positions, the 8, 9s, and 10s. For a lot of those positions, the top rate of pay was well above what the market rate appeared to be from the study findings. So my question is, why are we making the top range of those salaries, especially the level 9 and level 10, are so much higher than they are now, so much higher than what the market rate for those positions are, and so much higher than what we're currently paying for those positions. So I'm curious why we landed at those numbers and what was the math that led us to that direction. It's probably a Cheryl question. I know Alan had to spend much time with it.
Part of it.
So I'd like to kind of hear, Cheryl, where we landed there and why it is so much larger than it had been and larger. It's not so much where it had been for me, but when you compare it to what the market rate for those positions was in the salary findings, it's so much higher than that.
Right. When the consultant did the analysis, they looked at several things. They looked, and depending on what position, determined whether they looked public or private. But they looked at jurisdictions, they also looked at the MARC study, and then they looked at additional private sector studies. They looked at what the range would be for those positions, given the level of complexity and the responsibility. And their recommendation was that our ranges were not broad enough, in some cases, to even hire for positions we're currently recruiting for.
Yeah,
If I could say one thing.
Please.
Do you have the compensation study?
I do.
Okay, well, if you look on, page 9 of the compensation study, you'll see what the, market rate is for like level 9 and, well, for all of them, but in particular, you mentioned like level 9 and 10. And if you look at what our current midpoint is, which is the market, for level 9, it is actually below what the market rate is. So by moving the midpoint up and creating actually an additional range, that would be appropriate to get closer to the market rate.
Yeah, and that part I understood, Alan, I did, but then when you look, and if you just look at the positions as a whole, I mean, most of these they're presented are roughly 36% higher than what the market rate is. It just seems to me that top level is higher than we have the capacity to pay. We're at levels that seem to be what would be direct contracts with that particular employee. So when I look at the other ranges, they all seem within line, and especially comparative, but these top two, that are so far above what the market rate is, I don't see why we need to have that capacity built in to be that high. And I didn't see where it would hit within those ranges as well. The midpoint would still leave the range a little bit to where it would be, but the finance director or the police chief is almost $40,000 above what the market rate is on that position, just by the market comparison. So that's a very large spread there. And I understand it does give us an opportunity when we're recruiting positions, but there's also then, do we need to look at when we're recruiting on that top level positions, do we need to have a contract negotiation for that position that's similar to what we have with others, or does it need to be on scale? But this just seems out of whack as I look at it. So I just need clarity on why we landed there, why it's so much higher above what the rate is.
The other thing that the consultant indicated was that when you look at the spread, what she was looking at in terms of best practice was 50% spread on either end of your midpoint. So if you go back and look at the table that Alan provided.
Why are we setting the midpoint so much higher than market rate? Why are we setting the midpoint to be 10% above what our market rate is for those positions?
I mean, the comp rate should be 90%.
Well, because what she's looking at is.
Am I missing something there?
Yeah, the comp ratio is supposed to be at 90%. 90% would be market rate.
One of the things that she explained when she came in March was that best practice comp ratio is 90%.
Right.
Our overall average comp ratio is 93%, but we have employees, as you can tell from here, that are below that. So what she's trying to do is to make them competitive, get to the 90% comp ratio. and you need a spread, a range spread to be able to do that of 50%.
No, I must be, usually I grab the numbers pretty well, but I must be missing something in the numbers to make us need to make that large of a point or adjustment to cover what the gap was.
Well,
There's something I'm not connecting.
let me say, even though the market rate may be above what a particular individual is currently making, that does not mean we're gonna move that individual up to that market rate.
No, I
Whe-
understand.
Whether, regardless of what level, or move the individual down.
Sure.
It'll have an effect on that individual when they receive their merit increase, based on the comp ratio, but there's no plan to move somebody up $4,000 or $5,000 just because of the market rate.
Well, and I understand that piece, but that's not driving, it's just to have the range as high as it is, why that's a necessity.
Is your issue with the spread?
Yeah, the top level's too high on those, from what I can see, I don't even know how we could, from a budget perspective.
Oh, we can't.
So why, I mean, then you've just got a cap that they can go to that really is unrealistic for us to pay at that position, and it doesn't appear that the market dictates that we have to pay at that. That's the part I can't come to terms with.
Well, I'm glad that we got this, document tonight.
This is the document she provided when
Yeah,
she did the
this is what we had
presentation.
Yeah, this.
Last month.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm glad we got this document because it shows, for example, the maps between the old 9-point range and the 10-point range we've got now.
Mhm.
You're right, it's gone up nearly 35%. For the highest paid position that's not the city administrator in this city. You know, we can now pay, according to the salary scale, you're looking at, 107 to 892 in the current ranges. And now it's going up to 140, and I'll be honest, I don't think that we could even come close to affording that, within our city government.
Well, and until someone with the current salaries, reaches that, it would be, with merit increases and using comp ratio, it would be many, many, many years. I can't tell you exactly how many. But because somebody, once they reach the midpoint and go slightly beyond that, their merit increases will actually slow down, not the amounts, because they're above the market. So to think that anyone is really ever going to reach 140 at this point, I could say fairly certain that that's not gonna happen.
And that part I understand, and even from how we're doing the adjustments and looking at the merit adjustments, but what it does do when you have a salary scale like this, is when you're recruiting for a position,
right,
that's the ask. So, we
Well,
will, and I understand that's the starting point, and there's all this negotiation, but it makes it appear that we have the capacity to fund that in that way.
Well, that's the ask only if the applicant knows what the top of the salary range is. There's no reason.
This is published, so if they don't know, they're not doing very good homework, so then that makes them a lesser candidate.
Well, typically, when you post a position, you post the hiring range.
Right.
So, you would not post, and you wouldn't post that you're going to pay at that level. You're gonna look at your market, and you're gonna be posting, sometimes you post min to mid, and sometimes you post the entire range, but typically, you're not posting advertising that you're going to pay the max of the range.
Right, that's what I was.
And, yeah, oh, well, that makes sense, and I
So you
get that,
might
I just,
advertise from the minimum to the midpoint, or not
Right.
greater than.
Right.
And actually, if we're advertising a certain rate, but then you're looking for somebody that maybe is going to stay for a while and is hoping that they're going to be able to earn greater in the future, that if they do their homework, they're going to realize that yes, maybe over time, they could get closer to the top of the range.
right, and that part I even understand, it's just, it's wide right now, and I still haven't heard a good justification for it to be such a wide range, and I know, like I said, Alan doesn't have very long with this, he didn't work with Gail for very long, so I'm kind of leaning on Cheryl to come up.
Except I will say, in my experience, which is
Yes.
over 30 years, 50% is a very typical width of a range. So that is for not just cities, but for a lot of employers.
I was gonna ask you whether cities
Yes.
or private, and I can see that in private industry, but even then, the ranges tend to overlap significantly. And so you'll see that upper end of the range adjusted downward. You don't see a gigantic progression like we're seeing here, a 20% increase between ranges, between different
Well,
salary
it should be
grades.
15.
Oh, 15, yeah, but I mean, still, that's a significant spread. And I'm kind of in agreement with Heath on this one. There's many times when those salary ranges become recruiting tools. And the reason why I say that is because if you have a certain position that's in a very high level of demand, we have a utilities director that has not been hired yet.
Right.
Very specialized position. Those people are not, you don't find those people growing on trees. And so what they're gonna do is they're gonna say, well, I know that I'm high in demand and I don't have very many of me around. So you can afford to pay me up at that high end of the range because you won't find many of me around. And so that's the concern I've got, and I think that might be a concern that others might have on the dais too, that, you know, with us publishing this, and this is public record, so I mean, it's gonna be published, all right? That an individual who knows that they're high in demand and knows that there's not very much availability for that position might just try to ask for that.
Yeah, real quick, I can tell you that when you're recruiting for positions, part of what you do is lock people down every step of the recruiting process. And you start with, this is what the position was advertised for, and are you willing to work for the money that's been advertised? And you lock them down when you get their resume, and you lock them down when you do a phone interview, and you lock them down so that they don't use it as leverage for you at the last moment. And honestly, if you've got a candidate that approaches you at the last moment and decides, well, you've got more room in your salary range, Ellen, maybe you could speak to this.
Well, yeah, I mean, if it gets that far, you're exactly right. We would let them know pretty early in the process what the salary is going to be approximately. Plus, we would know what their salary currently is, so, you know, we understand that somebody's not gonna take if they're currently working, isn't gonna take a big decrease in their salary or, under normal circumstances. So, you know, just because the range is what it is, doesn't mean we're gonna pay people, especially to start at that level. I mean, we just won't do it.
I guess to Heath's point is, are you saying you'd like to see that range smaller?
I think it is. I don't see in.
I mean, if we're not gonna pay it.
Understand, this is, I mean, I've been on council for 3 years. I think this is the third time that we've passed salaries, a compensation adjustment. Is that right, Steve? So it will be, and when the market dictates that those positions are higher and we can fund it, I think then you make the adjustment there. But I just don't see the reasoning of publishing a scale that high. And I think Steve had a good point. We've got these ranges, and they all are very tight and great adjustments until we get to 8, and then the jumps all get really big. And it just seems like it's too far off, and it's not what we're gonna have the capacity to pay those positions, so I don't understand why it needs to be published in such a way. I know that will throw our ratios off, and, you know, it may have been a great question to have when, and Gail may have been able to lead some information into that as well, but as it stands now, I don't know, I just don't see any reason for us to publish a scale that wide, a range that wide.
I mean, is it gonna lower our flexibility if we do?
Here's what you would do, a couple things, and I'll speak to this based on his experience. What we have now, if you look at our current spread, our spread is all over the place.
Right.
If you go with what the consultant recommended, and you'll recall she talked about, what the defense has been is the number of deviations you have from a certain point, what they consider fair payment when she's had to defend, pay cases. What you would do is you would have a range of a 50% spread for the positions that you're comfortable with. When you get to 7, 8, and 9, you would basically be picking a number instead of the recommendation that she's recommending as best practice, which is the 50% range if you choose to lower it. It would change the comp ratios. It would change the mid as well. I don't know how we would get a recommendation from our consultant for that.
Right, and I understand that, I mean, I'm sorry to monopolize the conversation, and I understand that you would almost be picking some things out, and it may not hit, but you could just, it's so striking that all the adjustments are under 10% across the board until you get to 8. And then they're big numbers, and they're so much above market rate and so much above our current rates that there's just no sense to me in publishing.
Okay.
So without an adjustment, and even if it is picking a number, I mean, we can look at what our current ones are, and some adjustments come to there. It may not be the 15 and 50%. That's where we may
Okay.
go off the recommendation,
Okay.
understanding that simply we don't have the capacity to pay max, and if we can't pay max, it's silly for it to be published. That's as bluntly put as I can say it. And I don't know if that's an adjustment we can pick and say now how we need to do that. I hate to put it off, I mean, obviously for personal reasons, because I think we do need to move forward with what's this. We got a lot of folks in the back of the room want to know what's going on with it. But, either way, I can't see how I could support the 140 and 122 and even the 106 maxes.
Okay.
Because they're just above what we pay, they're above the market rate, and they're higher than the capacity I think we'll ever pay for those spots until revenues, markets, everything I mean, cost of living is always going to go increase, and the market rate comparison is always going to go higher. But we don't need to adjust to the higher now, we need to adjust to the reality. And Alan, if I'm way off on the way I'm looking at this, please feel.
No, I understand.
Your first time out, if I'm way off saying that.
No, I
it just
understand
seems
what you,
silly to
I
have the
totally
numbers as big as
understand.
they are.
I mean, you have to be a fiscal,
Right.
responsibility.
Absolutely.
But one of the things to keep in mind, if you look at the current pay grades, once it gets to pay grade 5, the progression to the next is very low. 5%, 8%, 16% isn't so bad. So what that is doing is really lowering the top of, all of the grade, the whole grade, as you move up. So what this has done is standardize that, and I think that's one reason why it went that high.
Sure.
Now, my other question is, would you feel more comfortable if we were able to move those in level 10 to level 9? And so the top of the range wouldn't be as high.
Well, I think that was actually where my suggested point would be for that salary range, because right now, I think the top level on, it's 107,000, so that's roughly closer, it's closer to that 10% number. I think that's a more reasonable number from where we land. But then I also think that does leave, and I'd have to look at the market rate, it leaves some of what's in level 9 a little bit higher, so I'm wondering if the level 9 range needs to come close. I just wonder if everything, 10, 9, and 8 need to be adjusted down. As I look at it, look at the market rate comparison, look at everything, if the top range of 10, 9, and 8 need to be brought down.
What if we did this? What if we took the midpoint progression for 8, 9, and 10, lowered it to 10% for those 3 positions, knowing that the real dollar difference is not gonna change much? Going from 15% at the lower ranges to 10% at the upper ranges, make the adjustments on those and then come back with those numbers.
So for 1 through 7, you would want to do the recommendation of 50%?
15,
and,
yes.
Okay.
Those work, they're in line.
And then 8, 9, and 10, you would not have a 50% spread, and you would?
I mean, would that work for you?
I think that's closer to the reality we need to do it. And Steve made a great point. When you have, and the frank truth about it is, that's not where our attrition rates are worse, is in those levels either. It's the levels below. So that's where our focus is, and where we've made great adjustments and can make a really quick impact, where these top ones are a little bit different. And I think if we do that, I mean, it was great to point to, that Steve made from the private sector, is your top ranges don't hit the same thing as, your generals don't have the same salary as the troops, so to speak. And the ranges don't have to be the same. So I think that might be a great way to look at adjustments and try to go from there with it.
We could do that.
How quick could this be back on? Because we've already made the employees wait for their increases. I know we're gonna retroactive till January 1st, but.
Well, this wouldn't affect the salary increases that are.
Yeah, we'd have to.
Pipeline.
Yes, because if you don't vote to approve this tonight, then we would bring it back to you.
Right.
Can we vote with the 10%?
And we would we wouldn't make any changes until you approve.
I think we do, I mean, Todd, I think it's fair, but I think we'd have to see calculated numbers. And I hate to say, I'm not as good with the numbers, with the way they're figuring these, to be able to calculate them on the fly. I don't know if there actually is, with the short recess, a calculation that could be done with a revised table brought before the council. Only to put you directly on the
Okay.
spot, Cheryl, I mean,
There are some things
as well
that
as I can.
well,
Well, just off the top of my head,
There's some things-
I would assume grade 10 would be, the max would be about 15% less, because if
Right.
you reduce it by 5% at 8, reduce it by 5% at 15% less, so 10% is, that's about 20,000, just off the top of my head.
Yeah, my concern here is that we be voting on something we don't have numbers for.
Right, and I think there needs to be
Yeah.
there needs to be a reality to the table before we actually make a motion move, so I don't know how complex, I don't know if these are simple calculations on an Excel spreadsheet, that you plug in a different number and it changes that. So if that's an unrealistic expectation, I think this is the
Well,
time to say so.
You know,
if,
And Chris?
if I could, real quick, I don't wanna just plug numbers in on a spreadsheet. This is the kind of thing that, where we could actually go back and revisit the matter, albeit not in the public meeting, but with, Gail Merriweather offline, to get her thoughts on the matter as well. But yeah, if we were to, table the matter until.
With that in mind, then I'd like to move that we table new business item number 5.
Second.
Motion Freeman, second Shute, that we table new business item number 5. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 All
Cheryl, you have a
opposed?
good idea of the direction to visit with Gail?
I'll visit with her and see what her,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
New business item number 5 is tabled. And that is it for, the published agenda, council updates. If, staff have anything for council, Jeff?
I might just mention real quickly that, very similar to what Councilmember Sheep pointed out with our record numbers for spring soccer, we duplicated that for baseball, softball, and t-ball. So all of our spring, summer sports set record numbers this year, so we're excited about that. A lot of people being active this year, so.
18 teams for the first and second grade coach bids. 18. Not-
Keep you busy.
Well, I don't have to coach all of them.
Brian, you have anything?
No, Mayor.
Cheryl?
Yes. The utility director was mentioned. We have interviews scheduled for the utility director. The way that the recruitment firm works is they go through, 2 levels of interviews in the firm. They do the reference check for us before they bring candidates, so that after we interview, we have a very short window of being able to bring closure to the process in terms of offering a position, and we know that they've been vetted through the reference process. They also have a short list for the Business and Economic Development Director position. They are, in the process of conducting the second interview for that and doing reference checks, and they should be bringing us those candidates within the next week to be able to select candidates for interviews. So hopefully, by the end of this month, we will have, an agreement on an offer with the utility director position.
Ryan? Jeannie? Chief?
It's obviously not appropriate for me to comment on the actual investigation of the officer-involved shooting, but
Are you talking to your microphone, please?
No.
Sorry.
I would like to kind of explain the process and answer any questions the council might have. Several years ago, Chief Francis signed an MOU with the other agencies in Johnson County to create the Johnson County Multi-Jurisdictional Officer-Involved Shooting Team. And the reason for that is to meet the requirements that the public holds for this type of incident. There's 2 key elements here. One is that the investigation is thorough, and the other is that it's timely. And our agency does not have the capacity to do a timely investigation. We could be thorough, but it would take a long time for us to do that. The other thing that the shooting team does for us is it gives us credibility with the public. If we investigated our own officers in an incident of this magnitude, then we would not have credibility with the public or anybody else that reviews us or views us under a critical eye. So those things are important. The downfall to the shooting team, from my viewpoint, is that I'm not able to represent my agency in the manner that I want to. I'm not the person that stands in front of the camera or that releases information to the press It represents my department, our city, and the officers involved. I would love to be able to do that, but part of the agreement in the MOU is that the lead agency for the investigation handles all press releases. I was involved in that process. They gave us the courtesy of reviewing every press release that, before it was put out. Danica and I both reviewed the press releases. I was involved in the briefings. At one point, we were gonna have an on-camera, press briefing, and I was there for that, and at the last minute, they decided that that wasn't the best course of action, given that all the officers had not been interviewed. So that's why this process was done, in the manner that it was. The lead agency for the officer involved shooting team rotates, on a case-by-case basis. It just so happened that this time Olathe was up, so they were the lead agency. When I arrived at the scene, following the shooting, I thought things were handled extremely well. There were enough detectives, the crime scene had been secured, and going through the process, talking to individuals that were there, I thought everything was handled in a very professional manner. The officers were treated in a respectful and professional manner. The DA was present, which is a key element of the shooting team, to have that perspective there, to know, what's needed at critical points in this process. So that's why we have not released any information other than the mayor's statement to the media. Again, I would rather be the face of our organization in an incident of this magnitude, but it's just not feasible during this type of process. We just don't have the capacity to do that. So.
But you're happy with the performance of the officer involved shooting?
I am. I was very impressed with it. Going to the briefings, I mean, they were very organized. The detectives did a great job with briefing everybody and assigning work duties, and it's a very complex investigation, and they handled it extremely well. In my experience, I was very impressed with what I saw.
Thanks, Joe.
Any questions?
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Joe. Does council have anything for staff?
Just a very quick, welcome to Allen. Nice to have you, trial by fire, first time out, you put on the spot, and, happy to have you here. Thank you.
And Danica's here too. Chance to meet our new communications director, PIO.
On March 28th, I had the honor of welcoming the American Legion family, the 2nd District Convention, to town. I want to say it was more than 25 posts across north and central Kansas. It was the first time that Post 19, the Leroy Hill Post, had hosted the event, even though the post has been open for 85 years. I want to give a little special thanks to, somebody in leadership from the Legion said, hey, do you think we could get the American flags up on Main Street? And I said, well, I think I'll see what we can do. And then I thought, my gosh, we got to be able to get the American flags up. It's the first time that the district conventions come to town. I asked Cheryl, and it was done, and it was noticed by the people that attended. So hats off to whoever in the city, I think it was Public Works, that managed to get those up. Thanks so much for that, but it was a great privilege to welcome them to town. And with that, the only other thing that I have is that April 7th, Tuesday, the first Tuesday in April, is tomorrow. It's Election Day. If you haven't pre-voted, I encourage everyone to get out and exercise your constitutional right to participate in an election. So.
Just one last thing, real quick. We're coming forward, we're tabling the employee salary scale discussion to the next meeting. I wanted to know if there would be a possibility that we could get a breakdown, something I was going to be looking for at this meeting and didn't get it, year over year, the positions, I know we have the 2015 numbers for proposed salaries. I'd like to see the year over year from last year on those, if that's possible.
Well, I'm certain it's possible, it's just data.
Yeah, would that be?
Just the previous salary schedules for 12, 13, and 14.
I'm talking about how we have the detailed breakdowns by position, I'd like to be able to see those. We have employee salaries listed for proposed 2015 compensation structure. By position, is there a possibility we can get 2014 salaries?
14 is still online, salary.
Yes, no, I'm talking about, we have it by position. Yeah, so the detailed breakdown by position, sir.
So the position breakdown that you have in here for,
Correct.
for 15.
Add a column for 14, please. So we could
Would
see
you like
the
this for 14?
proposed
Okay.
increases. Thank you very much, I would appreciate that. And then, the other thing I had real quick was, having to do with, I know that there's some folks in here that are city employees that are really concerned about the fact we tabled this. Understand this, we are going to make sure that those individuals who are expecting an increase are gonna get their increase. We just wanna know that from an ordinance perspective, that we're doing right by the city's finances as well. So, bear with us for 2 weeks, we'll make sure we get this right, and you get your increases. Thank you.
Yeah, well, and I would also point out, as it turns out, based on the way this was presented to us this evening, not only were we going to be getting the increases, but the pool of people that were going to be eligible
Larger.
Yes, it was larger. So, does anyone else have anything to add? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Motion, Freeman, second, Winters, that we adjourn. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, we are adjourned.
Thank you.